Hey everybody, this is Jeff Lavery from barnfinds.com, and this is my latest acquisition, the 1999 BMW M3, part of the venerable E36 platform. I wasn't expecting to own this car, but as life often does, it put it right in my lap, so to speak. This is a final year E36 M3. It is a convertible, which wasn't my first choice, but it was right down the street for me. It was running condition, certainly has some needs still, but ran, drove, and it was a can't pass it up kind of price. Basically, it was at a body shop that took the car in as part of a sort of a trade agreement, if you will. They had an interest in old BMWs, thought they could make some money on it, so another body shop kind of gave it to them, less the cost of some overdue unpaid storage fees, which is how this car came to be available. I watched it for about a month and a half, stopping in, checking it out, every now and again asking for a little more information in terms of maybe putting on a lift and seeing how it looks underneath, and then just biding my time. You know, as life often does, it kind of just kept me out of the picture for a few weeks where I just had some things going on that I couldn't really get back to it. And by the time I was ready to able to have a serious conversation, they were so tired of tire kickers and people coming, not showing up and coming and offering ridiculously lowball offers or not having the money in general, that by the time I made my offer, which was low but fair, they were just happy to have someone who actually could step up and pay the bill. So that's how I came to own this car. Now, it hasn't really been well documented on the site, but this is probably my favorite chassis of BMWs that I can remember. I had a 95 M3 years ago that I daily drove for the better part of 5 years. I put a ton of miles on it, drove it far and wide, had a great time with that car. Easily my favorite car I've ever owned. And then a untimely thermostat failure caused me to blow the head gasket while driving south on 95. And I was at a time and place in my life where I really couldn't focus on taking on another project, unlike now where I seem to welcome them on a daily basis. So I sold that car to a friend who got the head gasket fixed, decked and cleaned the head, all that good stuff, new cooling system, and then he sold it on to somebody else. For a while, I considered trying to buy that car back because I had some great memories with it, but it just, again, time and effort involved in trying to recapture something that may or not have come back just seemed like too much work to put in. So when this car showed up, I had an interest in it. It was a convertible, wasn't my top choice, but as you can see, I've actually already done some work in the way of securing one of the very rare factory hardtops for the car, having it painted to match, and it looks fantastic. It still has some needs, but I've already gotten a fair amount of the cosmetic issues fixed on the car, and it's just a matter of time to dive into some of the mechanical needs it has. Mostly it's typical E36 stuff, so I have no record with the car, so I don't know when the cooling system was done, and it has an absolutely typical shattered gear shift linkage, so it's a lot of effort to get it into each gear. But the good news is these are all well-documented fixes. The parts are widely available, and at this point in the E36 platform's life, those parts are fairly affordable, so there's really nothing that's super scary about owning one of these, even it being an M3, sort of the double-edged sword of it being a warmed-over version of what the European market's got. It means that the engine is very simple to work on, and there's really nothing too exotic about it in terms of hard to find parts or super expensive components. So all in all, I'm still feeling pretty good about it. Let me show you some of the things I've had to address, starting with the seats. I'm actually sitting in one of the original seats in the car, which was completely destroyed. That's sort of one of the bigger cosmetic faults, was that the previous owner, who according to records happened to be a very successful local furniture store owner. It seems this was parked at a beachside house he had here in Rhode Island, and he just left the top down all the time. So the seats were destroyed. The carpet was and still is kind of funky, but I've done some things to improve that. And it was clearly just someone's weekend toy that sat down at the beach with the roof down, and as evidenced by the amount of dog hair, Fido was along for the ride in most instances. So let me show you a few other things about this car, and basically bring you on the journey of yet another project. As you know, I've been here before talking about my 190E 2.3 16-valve Cosworth, which unfortunately is at a little bit of a standstill right now. So as opposed to just being a patient person waiting for that to be done, I decided to go out and buy something else to bide my time. But that's what brings us here every week, right, guys? And one of the biggest problems with this car when I first got it, as I mentioned, was the interior was in really sad shape. The stock leather bucket seats were just blown apart. You know, seams were gone, dog hair everywhere, lots of stains. They were just nasty. Ironically, they were the first pair of old BMW power seats I've had that work perfectly. All the motors still function, which gave me some pause that maybe I should refinish them. But the difficult part about that decision was that it would mean sticking with a fairly weak, non-bolstered seat, whereas some M3s of this generation were equipped with a really awesome bucket seat called a Vader. The Vader was just your world-class, thickly bolstered, lots of nice contours, you know, racing seat inspired bucket that they made optional on the M3s. So between that and my love of manual seats, you know, ones that don't have electronics waiting to die and probably the worst position possible, I started looking for a set of Vader manual seats in the right color combination of basically dove gray leather. So dove is another word for light gray. And in the case of this car, and while I hate to keep giving Facebook Marketplace any credit, it is where I find a good amount of my parts now. I looked around, I saw a set in Maine for sale that I had no time to drive up to Maine, but as luck would have it, the seller was going to a track day in Palmer, Massachusetts, which is about an hour and a half away from here. So a little better than Maine, but still not great. And then after another call for help on another forum, it turned out that a Rhode Island guy who was going to go to that track day was willing to grab the seats for me and meet me the next day at his lunch hour. So I found an awesome set of Vader seats, dove gray leather, manual, and heated, which ironically enough, this car came with heated seats, so I'm hoping come wintertime they still work, for a great price, and they bolted right in. I used that as an opportunity to basically steam clean the carpets. The carpets were loaded with coffee stains, which anybody who's had a parent who was an executive or business owner knows that they're always slugging coffee, and it was no different in this car, where clearly whenever the coffee spilled, they just let it fall down between the console and the seat and never bothered getting it out. So I steam cleaned the carpets. They're worlds better than they were. They're still not great. They could probably use maybe another cleaning or a professional cleaning at someone who runs a detail shop. But for the time being, once I get a set of floor mats in here, it'll look way better than it did when I got it. So that, combined with the seats, combined with the painted hardtop, really changed this car. Now, one thing about the hardtop is it hides the soft top. Now, that's a good thing for a few reasons. A, I just think cars look better with a fixed roof. B, it made the structural rigidity something you could actually consider a serious feature of this car as opposed to a complete and utter joke, which it was like when you had the top down. And C, the soft top is okay. It works about as well as any other E36 power roof I've seen. But the bigger issue is the rear window is super cloudy. Like, you can't even see out of it. And at some point, I'm going to have to deal with that. The top could probably use some adjustments. It could also use, potentially, there's some mechanism inside this part of the body right here that's causing it to be a little bit slow and make some odd noises when it comes back up. But really, that's nothing I'm worried about in the short term. I'm not really a convertible guy anyway. I am an E36 M3 guy. It's my favorite car. So for the time being, the hardtop really solves a lot of problems. In addition to making the car more attractive as a potential resale project, I didn't buy it for that reason, but I will say that when these cars come up, the manual transmission E36 M3, I think they made under 3,000 of them, less than 3,000. So it's a fairly desirable car if you're looking for a drop top. So with the hardtop, it tends to make these cars infinitely more desirable because it gives people the option of having the best of both worlds. So all that said, there's a lot of short-term fixes already taken care of here. It has some of the typical E36 cosmetic issues, which include the door panels tend to warp over time. So they're not perfect, but they're, again, good enough for the time being. If I find a set of perfect ones, maybe I'll jump at them someday. Ironically enough, I was in a junkyard this past weekend that had an E36 convertible show up with this color interior, which is a little harder to find than a typical tan. And as I was driving in, a guy in an E36 was driving out, and I was like, I bet he grabbed all the good stuff off of that car, and indeed the door panels were gone, which tells me they were probably in decent shape. And I was looking for a rear seat bench because mine is okay. It's not torn, but it's severely damaged by the sun. So I was hoping to find a good bench. That didn't happen, and I've struck out a few times now on bench seats in this color. So I think I'm going to move on and just find a detailer who can maybe dye the seat for me. I've seen a lot of people have success with Lexol products, so that's something that's going to be my next move, is to see if I can find a detailer who's got those products at home and just pop the rear bench out and bring it over to them. And that'll really freshen up the interior quite a bit. You know, final thought, I've got a new European market steering wheel on the way. The stock wheel is got some odd deterioration issues. It's pretty grimy looking, so I want to get that out of here. And then another final improvement I made as a result of just being a routine follower of junkyards is I found the upgraded CD43 head unit. So this car came with a cassette deck, which as a child of the 80s doesn't really bother me, but the CD43 is a nice upgrade. It's way more powerful, and I've got way more CDs than I do tapes at the moment, so it'll be useful as well. So those are my thoughts on the interior. Next, I'll take you under the hood and show you something I'm worried about / working on hopefully in the next month or so. Now, the 99 M3 is powered by the S52 engine, which is a 3.2 liter inline six. My 95 M3 has known as the S50, and in some ways is a slightly more desirable engine. There's really no difference in power output, but the S50 was an OBD1 car, so it was far less prone to check engine lights and other warning lights that could cause you not to pass an inspection. The S52 is an OBD2 motor, so that means, like right now, I got a little bit of a misfire. The check engine light is loud and proud, and even with the replacement of a throttle input sensor, it's still going to stay on, and until I get that light turned off, it won't pass inspection. So I gotta be honest, I kind of missed my car for that reason, not only for the ease of maintaining it, not having those check engine lights come on, but also because the S50 was a little bit more of a rev-happy engine. So this later engine technically is more powerful. It's got more torque. It makes more power at, I think it makes more power at lower RPM. I'm not entirely positive, but I know it's definitely, purely from a numbers standpoint, a more powerful engine. Unfortunately, in my opinion, based on the limited driving I've done with it, it's definitely more of a down-low car, whereas the S50 a little bit more prone to being a high rev, really, a fun car to ring out, in other words. So maybe over time I'll come to appreciate it. That's a very, very minor nitpick at the moment. But before I even get to any of that and driving impressions, some of the things this car needs right off the bat are the oil filter housing gasket, which didn't leak. I looked at this car 4 or 5 times before I bought it, had heard the engine running, saw it on a lift with the engine running, and there was no clear oil leak. So I can only figure that over the few weeks of me just driving it after work, getting it warmed up, that gasket basically just gave out. So now I've got a fairly prodigious oil leak coming from that filter housing, and I mean, look up any generation of BMW, the filter housing gasket is a typical problem. Otherwise, it's fairly straightforward stuff. It probably needs a full assortment of, plugs, coil, plug wires, cap and rotor is what I'm trying to say. And, well, I don't know, maybe it has other things related to ignition going as well. I know it's got a pretty nasty misfire when it's cold, which is, again, well documented, but there's a wide number of potential fixes for it. And the full assortment of cooling system issues. Right now, it's not leaking any coolant, which is a good sign for a car of this generation. But any E36, really, it's like every 80,000 miles, if not a little bit sooner, you need to do, definitely water pump and thermostat. Radiator should also be done. Valve cover gasket is a must-do. And right now, I've got all those parts here at home. I just have to make some time to devote to either doing it myself, which is something I'm sure a lot of people would like to see me do, but time is always a bit of an issue. But more likely, I will just bring it up to my shop in Providence where the 190 is, and we'll just get this banged out in a week, and I can kind of enjoy the car for hopefully some nice, early winter driving here in New England. Otherwise, there's a few other small things I'm going to tackle. The windshield's got a crack in it, so it's got to be done at some point. And then the nose, I think while it was in storage, someone backed into it, so the nose panel is a little bit pressed in. I don't know if you can really see it from here, but we'll try to give you a quick look at this. You can see right here that the nose panel that goes underneath the grill, there's a little bit of an indentation down here where it's not making contact. So the bumper actually is okay. The bumper is where it should be. It's this panel that got pushed in. So I've got to replace one of these. I actually went with the older style. So this is a facelift model where the grill actually is a little more pronounced. The older style, the grill appears more recessed, which I just happen to like better. And at the same time, we'll get the get the bumper detailed, replace. There's a vent down here that's missing, so we'll get that back in. And then it's a good opportunity also to upgrade to the European style headlights. So H4 bulbs or H1, I can't remember which, but regardless, it's a nice, easy upgrade. They're widely available for a very reasonable price. So that's going to be the next thing from a cosmetic standpoint, is we'll just get the nose freshened up a bit. And really between that and the aforementioned engine servicing, I'm hoping there's not a whole lot more that this car needs at the moment. You know, that's the good thing about E36s, are the fixes are so well documented by now, and their needs are pretty well known that basically whatever else comes up is going to be a surprise. And I know I haven't talked about suspension, but the car is still really tight, and that's on really crappy tires. These are mismatched tires that are of varying tread depth. So the fact that it still steers and stops and handles pretty okay, I take to mean that the suspension components are not suffering. This car only has 92,000 miles, so it's a fairly low mileage car as far as an E36 is concerned, one that hasn't been put away as a time capsule. So the mileage is encouraging in terms of it maybe not having major suspension needs right now, or at least maybe just simple components like, you know, sway bar end length, things like that. I do have a new set of wheels waiting to go on. They're being refinished right now. So we'll take a look at those in another episode when I get those mounted on tires. And hopefully by the next time you read this or watch this, we'll have at least the shift linkage, the cooling system, and the oil leak fixed, so we can drive this thing in anger a little bit without too much fear. So anyway, that is my latest project, 99 BMW M3 convertible. And we'll be back here hopefully with more frequent updates than the 190, because this one should be a pretty straightforward resurrection in terms of what its immediate needs are. But right now, thanks for watching, and we'll go take you on another ride in the high ace before we sign off for good here.